Thanks, Peter. So the story I want to tell you, I have called 10 Years, 10 Lives, because we're now a decade down the road from when Project Yucatan first started. This is a picture of an old hacienda, Hacienda San Rafael Acum, and it is going to figure somewhat prominently in the story that I'm going to share with you, tell you, and mostly show you. So Project Yucatan has been in existence now for over a decade, and it, to me, is an example of the principles of school-based family counseling combined in kind of a unique and different way. And as we listen to our respective stories of what we're involved with, that's one of the things that I'm really struck with, is the uniqueness of the ways that this model can be applied. But the basic theme, of course, that I think we all believe in is that when you can get a true collaboration between the different systems in which a kid's life is embedded, and those systems can work together with youth, then wonderful things can happen around lives and significant change can occur. So today I'm hoping that I'll give you a brief history of Project Yucatan. It'll be a review for those of you who were here in 2012, when I gave a 5-year update and looked at what had happened at that point in time. We're now 5 more years down the line. And I particularly today want to look at the project as an ongoing example of the school-based family counseling principles across time, and particularly looking at the systems that are kind of the woven network that has been holding this project up for a decade now. Most importantly, I want to share the narratives of what has unfolded in the lives of 10 or 11 of the original project kids, what's happened to them 10 years down the line, and talk about our musings, our beginning learnings about what the school-based family counseling model has to say about the potential education of rural youth around marginalized youth. In this case, the population worked with is a population of poor Mayan kids who are the indigenous group in this particular community. So we're at the very beginning stages of our research. We took 1-year and 5-year video interviews of the students we were working with, and we have those translated. We have just begun to translate 10-year interviews that we did just a year ago in June of 2015. And so our data is not all in, we're just at the beginning part of it. But we have some interesting themes that we're seeing that I want to share. And so now, before I go any further, I have a confession to make. And the confession is that I never started out to do any research on school-based family counseling or actually any research of any kind. And I didn't even actually start out to be involved in Project Yucatan. What happened was that as this story was beginning to form, this woman, Joan Avis, who was a friend, longtime friend and colleague of Brian's and mine, she had this thing about these old abandoned haciendas. And she was really more than annoyed that they were being purchased by Bancomer and these big corporations and turned into really high dollar resorts for the wealthy. So she gathered together all her savings that she could find, and she bought the hacienda that I showed you at the beginning. A dilapidated set of 20 buildings in ruins with only the Casa Principal partly habitable. It sits 3 miles outside of a little town called Tequite. And once she had done that, she got together with this young man, Ruben Ku, who is a Mayan man now working in Merida. Joan had encountered Ruben some years earlier. She'd mentored and facilitated education for him. She somehow finagled a way at USF for him to have a scholarship that the Jesuits supplied. He came to the United States and lived with us for 2 years, learned English, and got his MBA from USF. Now he's back in Merida working for the government. But Joan got connected with Ruben, said, okay, it's time. We've got to put this dream we have for a project together. And we're going to use the hacienda somehow on behalf of this community, because it really should belong to them, not to Bancomer. So Joan went to the mayor at the time and said that everybody in town was talking about the gringo that now owned the hacienda, and she went and said, I'm her, and I want to get involved in the community. What can I do? And he very quickly said, educate our children. Most of them in the town drop out of high school, not only high school, but they drop out of school between the ages of 4th and 6th grade. And so they're uneducated. And he said they have to, because they're required to go to work to help their families survive. There are no other options. And their identities and their career identities are already foreclosed. 2 options. The garment industry. This town makes guayaberas, the dress shirts, for export to the United States and Europe, or there's subsistence farming. So that's where these Mayan youth were headed. That's what life was for them. At this time, Joan kind of gathered me under her wing and said, we're starting the project this summer, 2005. We've worked with the mayor and we've selected 20 kids, 10 boys, 10 girls, who are all dropouts from school. And they are going to be the first group of Project Yucatan. Come help. So how I got into this was I had really thought I was going to be working in Hawaii on a project that I was studying with. 2 of my teachers died suddenly. I was adrift with knowing what I was going to do with energy, and I thought, well, the Yucatan, 2 weeks, that'll be fun, and hopefully it will result in something good. Obviously, I didn't find Project Yucatan. It found me, because it's now 11 years later, and I'm very different feelings about it. I don't know if you resonate with this, but I think most of us have looked at something one day and said, I feel like I'm in the middle of something bigger than I am, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. And that, for me, is Project Yucatan. So I went with Joan and Ruben. We began bringing the parents in and educating them on what we wanted to do, asking for their support, getting their input and their cooperation right off the bat. And I have to say the parents were absolutely, they were amazingly curious more than anything else. But fascinated because they loved the idea that their kid might get an education. And in 2005, in the summer, the first Project Yucatan started with 4 components. We had a 2-week summer intensive that was a personal growth and development project. We trucked the kids out to the hacienda every day and worked on the kinds of things that they didn't get in their regular school. And if they wanted to be in that program, they had to also agree to go to their high school for fall and spring semesters. So they had to be full-time enrolled in Cobai, their regional high school. Critical to that was we gave the parents a scholarship that paid them for lost wages. So the parents and the family didn't suffer financially by having their kid in school rather than working. And we're well aware that that was instrumental when we were first getting the project off the ground. We also set up an internet cafe, Cafe Akum on the plaza in Tikit. We used a space that the mayor gave us, and the mayor jerry-rigged kind of a wire across from the mayor's office, clear across the plaza to the building that he had given us so that we could get internet. USF gave us 25 used computers that we hauled down to Mexico and set up, and that was our internet cafe. And that was the beginning of the program. So how the program looked, basically, as I said, the mayor trucked the kids out every day using police vehicles. We fed them 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch, because they were pretty hungry kids. Their families didn't have enough to eat. We did a lot of interactive, high engagement work on things that they didn't have in their high school, which was mostly old textbooks and memorization. And this was work on emotions and understanding feelings, anger, happiness, joy, etc. We did a lot of work on public speaking, on researching, on presenting, but mostly what we noticed was the kids had a whale of a lot of fun. They kept saying, learning's fun. We didn't know learning could be so much fun. We included yoga and art and music and poetry across the 2 weeks. So we kind of tried to do a whole child education thing. And we had daily boys and girls counseling groups. We took with us 4 to 6 counseling volunteers, graduate students from the university, and they are the people that did the actual teaching, and they are the folks that facilitated these groups. And these were really an important part of the day. I was reminded of your place to talk concept. These kids had no place to talk. And the idea of talking about self and life was not a typical part of their experience, but they had tough lives. Poverty, domestic violence, substance abuse, all sorts of issues, and they responded very well to the structure of a relationship-oriented therapeutic group. And we separated them by gender for a reason, and that seemed to work well. And as I said, our graduate students that came with us, they were the true teachers and the mentors for these young people. Kept them engaged till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then the kids went back home to dinner with their family, returned to the town plaza at 7 for a session from 7 to 10 at the internet cafe, and that session was dedicated to computer literacy and English literacy. So that's how that program looked initially. And we also added in something that we decided was really important, and that was a field trip every week to one of the Mayan archaeological sites, because it blew us away when we first met these kids in 2005. None of them had been to any of their archaeological sites, not a single one. They knew practically nothing about their rich heritage or their culture. So we engaged trilingual guides to go with us, and then we did a lot of follow-up activities around the Mayan culture and trying to instill some pride in who they were. And I think that proved to be a really important part of what we did. We celebrated and celebrated and celebrated because we discovered early on that's one thing. We interviewed the Mayan moms at one point in time and asked them what kinds of things made them happy, and they had two answers: family and celebration. So we celebrated. This was a celebration at the end of one of the 2-week festivals. It was an obstacle course that we had set up for the kids to kind of anchor the fact that we had been working with them on setting dreams, recognizing obstacles, learning how to go under, over, around, through them to problem solve, and we celebrated that learning in this particular way. Then we also celebrated with families. This was a trace race day during January. Whenever we happened to be there and there were special holidays, we'd have a big celebration at the Cafe Acum and invite parents and kids. By this time, we were also forming relationships with the families. We were being invited into homes. We were being fed. We were being marched down to the shrines where the Virgin of Guadalupe and San Rafael were on display in the community. And we found the more we were willing to engage with the community on their terms, the more the trust began to build between the parents and the community and us. This was a fiesta that end of the 2-week session. We always had a fiesta out on the hacienda. The kids showed their work off to their parents. People brought music and played and danced. The parents did all the cooking and brought their best tamales and beans, and we'd have a lovely feast. Kids spent days decorating the Casa Principal with their work. And on this particular occasion, the woman over there on the left was one of the doñas in the community, and we usually had 100 to 200 people show up at these fiestas. Thanks again to the mayor, to the community. He would truck people out to the hacienda all day long so they could participate. But she wanted to talk to the kids, and she basically said in no uncertain terms, "I hope you understand what a privilege it is to get an education. And you are being given a gift of that opportunity, and don't mess it up." She said, "I always wanted to learn to read and write, and I have never been able to do that." And she's no longer with us now, but I can still hear her words kind of echoing. So we thought pretty naively at the end of this first year that what we would do is set this first group, been a real successful program, we thought we'll set them afloat, they'll go forward with their high school and on to their lives that will, they're on their way, and we'll start with a new group. And as soon as that was announced, parents and kids themselves all came to us and said, no, please don't. Please stay with us. And so as we began to talk about it, we realized that several things were operating. These families didn't have enough experience yet to support their kids in moving forth. The kids themselves didn't have enough experience. And the Mayans as a culture have a fairly passive nature. They will let stuff go. And we had, I heard you talking about that, Delene. We would have a kid not show up one day and we would say, where's so-and-so? Well, she failed an English test at high school, so she's a failure now and she's quitting the program. So we'd get in the truck, we'd drive back to town, we'd get her, and we'd say, come on, you're not done, you haven't failed, you maybe have to take a test over, but you need to learn the difference. And so we realized that if we just cut them loose, any of the gains that we'd made might have slipped away. So we ended up staying with the first group for 3 years. And that is this first group. And in 2008, we had 14 of the original 20 kids graduate from high school, all of them having been dropped out when we first started with them. So we were really pleased that 14 of the kids made it through high school and were graduates of Kobai as well as of the Project Yucatan. And this young guy kind of summarized what we're about with the program, and that's dreaming dreams, believing that if you can articulate a dream and see it, that anything is possible. The si se puede. Yes, we can. So that's a good peek at the program itself, the summer program, and how it began in the initial years. I was interested in taking a peek at the systems and looking at what kind of shape they are in right now. And what I realized, I guess I'd already known, but it was real interesting to me to see that the paradox in school-based family counseling as a systems approach is that systems paradoxically stay the same and change. The systems that hold the net under Project Yucatan are all still there a decade later. They have changed. They're in different form. And as we've looked at it, it's the integration of these systems that have provided the power that's created the impact on the young people's lives. This kind of little collage shows the systems that we've worked with, a representative of a parent up there, the mayor's office, a couple of our volunteers volunteered from USF. The man down here in the corner is the head of Avis, Mexico. He comes in every year and teaches the kids how to do watercolors. Joan as program director, and then Awadi and UTMA as universities in Merida and our university, USF. So the community to me has been one of the most interesting systems across time. And I'm still trying to figure out what it's all about, but I think I know at this point. The initial mayor was all over this idea. It was his idea, educate the children. And so the mayor has been integrally involved in providing transportation and some money for stuff and spaces for stuff. However, in the decade, the political party in power in town has changed either 3 or 4 times, pre-pan, and each time we've gone, I wonder what's going to happen when the mayor goes out. Well, nothing happened. The support, we'd go meet the new mayor, and all of the same support and maybe more was still there. And that is true to this day. This current year, the mayor's office has offered Project Yucatan a whole new space in a brand new cultural center that's been built. And I think what I'm learning from looking at Project Yucatan across time is having the gift of seeing relationships that can be formed across time and emerge and see the possibilities that can come from that. So this was the mayor's office to begin, still this same mayor's office, but different mayors. These are some of the different political players that have been around, along with Joan and I. And this slide with Joan and I and the gentleman in the blue shirt, he's the current mayor, and then a young man that we're working with. And that building back behind, brand new, it isn't even moved into yet, that's part of the new cultural center. We have no idea how this mayor pulled off building this cultural center, and it's not for us to ask or wonder. But that whole space is dedicated to Project Yucatan. We have to figure out how to get computers in there, but the kids are using it right now for their daytime stuff, so it's already in use, and it's within 5 minutes walking space of the plaza, so the kids can easily get there. So I think with that system, I think what's happened is that initially we felt dependent on the mayor's, the community for support, and I think now the community looks at Project Yucatan as an important asset to the community. So I think what's unfolded across the decade is a reciprocal relationship, I hope. The schools, Cobai, hasn't changed much. It's still there, still teaching pretty much the same way. But the folks there are very cooperative with us, and they look to Project Yucatan to extend what they cannot do. What we didn't expect was we didn't have any look at any plans for higher education in this whole deal. But we happened to make a friend with an Awadi administrator, and Awadi's the biggest public university. And he began helping to facilitate the idea that these kids might not need to stop with high school. They might be able to go on to higher education. And what he has done is he's prepared a way and paid for through his university the opportunity every spring for all of our kids who are seniors to take a free week-long course at the university in how to take the Sandoval, the national entrance exam. And so that ups the chances that our kids are going to score well enough to get into someplace by tons. So that's Awadi's crest and general building, and the relationship with Awadi has been phenomenal. The families, of course, they're all still there. We're involved with all of them. They're transitioning as all families do. There's been more births, more graduations. There's been some deaths, some major change. But the support just doesn't waver. This picture's a little dark, but I love this picture. It was taken in 2005 of 5 of the original moms. The one right in the front is deceased now. But these women have represented for me probably more than anybody I've ever seen or known the meaning of fierce compassion. They are something else again. And the dreams that they most hold are not for themselves. They don't have dreams for themselves. But they have one dream for their kids. And what is it? An education. That's what they all want. Critical also as one of the systems, the volunteers. We've had graduate students from north, from south, from here and there. They come, they go, they return, they stay in connection, they offer skills, they offer relationship. This young man was a spouse of the American consul at one point in time. He was also a professional photographer, so he taught the kids how to photograph, and then he arranged for a photography show to go up as an exhibit in the American consulate for a month, and the mayor kicked in the vans to transport all of the families into the opening reception, which to me is once again just an interesting look at how the systems can work with each other to make some amazing opportunities occur. Project itself has morphed along the way. In 2007, we added a Saturday program for middle school. Somebody said, I think it was you, Daleen, that things need to happen earlier than just high school. We recognized that as well, and now we have a Saturday program that is a prerequisite to the high school program. Awadi volunteers from Merida teach that. They use a curriculum that Joan and I put together on emotional intelligence and problem-solving skills. And finally, last year, a tutoring program in English was started by a volunteer. Kids who wanted to up their English literacy were paired with a mentor from the community in Merida, and those mentors have been working to form really creative, individualized ways of working on English based on the kids' interests and their skill levels. The tallest gentleman is Stephen Carey, a retired professor from USF, and he's the wheels behind this program. 3 of the students that he paired with mentors. And Stephen and I were just talking the other day, and we said, you know, we both know what's really making this successful. Yeah, English literacy, that's great, but it's the relationship that's forming and enduring that is mattering. And here's Astrid with her mentor, who is an expat from Canada living